How can you come to a wet fit and don't expect for you to get wet? You don't know it's blows you go get. You watching SAT TV.
Bring out the reading, SAT Telecoms.
Welcome to SAT TV News. I am Alicia George, your presenter. In our top stories, man dies in vehicular accident. Seismologist warns powerful earthquake, a warning for the Caribbean. Ukraine death toll rises to 22 as EU talks underway. And in sports, Cube Cheese Barbershop to face Malta India Harlem United in Division 1 competition final. Details of these will follow.
You're watching SAT Telecoms.
Welcome back. Honorable Ian Douglas, Minister for Legal Affairs, has declared that Dominica is more than ready to have the Caribbean Court of Justice, CCJ, as its final appellate court. Prime Minister Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit announced in January that Dominica had received no objection from the government of the United Kingdom to move away from the British Privy Council and recognize the CCJ as its final appellate court. Minister Douglas's statement comes as the main opposition United Workers' Party openly voiced its non-support for the CCJ. Dr. Thompson Fontaine, a UWP election candidate, stated recently, "As a party, we don't believe that Dominica is ready for this move. We don't believe it should have been done. There are still a lot of questions about the judiciary and the ability of our own people to preside over themselves."
It is appalling, but like I said, it shows political immaturity, it shows lack of depth on their part, it shows that they're out of touch with Caribbean reality, because today, being government of one of the CARICOM member states is not only about leading Dominica, it's leading the Caribbean and our development process, and it shows that the forward-thinking, visionary approach of the leader and the Prime Minister and the government at this time. We believe in Dominica that we possess what it takes to lead the rest of the region.
Mr. Douglas is confident in the ability of Caribbean jurists to deliver sound judgments, stating these are men of distinction who have distinguished themselves not only in the legal profession but have distinguished themselves intellectually, not only in the Caribbean but around the world.
I mean, we went to Parliament since 2006 and we passed the act in both jurisdictions to establish the Caribbean Court of Justice. However, there were some technicalities that didn't allow us, some constitutional requirements that we had to meet. One of them is writing to the British government, to the UK government, requesting the move from the Privy Council to the Caribbean Court of Justice. That hadn't taken place yet. So we had to hold back the court in its appellate jurisdiction, but the court has been operating in its original jurisdiction for about 5 or 6 years now.
The Legal Affairs Minister has further described the UWP's position as politically incompetent and said the opposition was unprepared to move Dominica forward. He added that Dominica's move to have the CCJ as its final appellate court is one of maturity, forward-thinking, and is realistic. While the CCJ is recognized in its original jurisdiction, which interprets and applies the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, in all Caribbean countries, only Guyana, Belize, and Barbados recognize the court in its appellate jurisdiction. In other stories, evidently, the war on productivity is not going away anytime soon. Mr. David Mead, team member of the Paribel Enterprises Committee on Productivity, feels compelled to make the public aware of what productivity really is and how it can help to advance Dominica.
From somebody who has worked most of my life outside of Dominica, and I've seen the difference in standards, we are lagging behind, Dominica is. And a lot of it has to do, again, with productivity, all right? Dominicans tend to have a laissez-faire attitude in doing business. We need to change that attitude because there's a global village around us. We're no longer isolated.
He says if Dominica does not step up to the plate, we will be left behind. According to Mr. Mead, what the committee is seeking to do is to create a platform for increased productivity in Dominica, describing the initiative as a marathon session, noting productivity is an ongoing process.
The strong management, and you identify your employees who have been very productive, and then of course you reward them, you evaluate them and you reward them, right? Because evaluation is very, very important, right? When you evaluate a worker, all right, you don't evaluate a worker to demoralize them or to demote them. You evaluate them to help them to produce more. Because by evaluating, you highlight their strengths, you outline their weaknesses, and you recommend what you can do to strengthen those weaknesses. Okay, so in a case like that now, it makes the employee more enthusiastic towards their work.
He blames a lack of proper training for seriously stifling productivity on the island, and as it relates to the agricultural industry, Mr. Mead suggested that we look at agriculture differently.
One of the things that's lacking here seriously in Dominica, my observation, is lack of proper training. With proper training, right, we can get better service standards in the tourism industry. All right, it's service first, service second, and service third. However, part of that training also comes with strong management. Well, we have to look at agriculture differently. Before we should look at agriculture as a labor, as a very hard labor, but it's not. We have to look at agriculture as a business. All right, we can make somebody can make serious money in agriculture.
The committee is expected to host a regional conference in Dominica in the near future. In more news, the United Workers' Party (UWP) candidate for Grand Fort Rivière-Siric constituency, Dr. Thompson Fontaine, has issued a challenge following a request by Prime Minister Honorable Roosevelt Skerrit for him to make public his bank documents following the controversy of the alleged misappropriation of funds from the DAS Dominica Association of Arts and Sciences account. Although then President of DAS, Dr. Clayton Shillingford, had publicly explained the misjudgment of the allegations on state media, the Prime Minister still seemed unmoved.
Misappropriation. In fact, Matt, I just after I resigned in 2000, came back as the DAS editor in 2011. I've been acting capacity since 20 from the board has ever issue of it. No, and now this government has, because they understand coming to the end of the reign, that they know that I have pre-established to a controversy. Now I heard the Prime for me to put statement. Or any day that the Prime Minister so requests on that the Prime Minister makes the Dominican public meant for his offshore very important. This is a private bank account after, and I believe the poll what are the source of bank accounts. So it will make available to the bank statements of his friend. I am prepared to make available my private bank account.
But do you have any to songs when it is organization I'm talking about related to you?
So if that is, I think that will closure to him, I'm prepared to do it. But also,
Dr. Fontaine says he is prepared to put forward his bank statement at any time the Prime Minister requests, but only under the condition that Mr. Skerrit makes available to the Dominican public his bank statements for his offshore bank accounts.
Together, because I have nothing to the DAS board as far as my honesty was concerned. There was not with the whole thing that transpired. I'm saying that I'm open. That's my bank statement. That's Prime Minister Skerrit.
They would have to, if you present on that day, you would have present every day.
About transparency and accountability. I'm being transparent. I'm transparent and accountable. That's what goes good for the person in the interest. The Prime Minister.
Dr. Fontaine added he has nothing to hide, So if the Prime Minister feels the bank statements will bring closure to him, he is prepared to do it. According to him, the Prime Minister needs to make his offshore bank accounts public, as he earns a salary of over $10,000 monthly, but has accounts with funds much higher than his salary can sustain. He went on to say if he is offering to be transparent, the Prime Minister must be willing to do the same. In other stories, one man is dead following a single vehicular accident that occurred late on the afternoon of Wednesday, February 19, 2014. Police Public Relations Officer Inspector John Carbon has the details.
Investigations are ongoing into a road traffic accident which occurred on the Silver Lake Public Road about 5:15 p.m. on February 19, 2014. Suzuki Escudo registration number PM569, which was driven in a southerly direction by 60-year-old Philip Luke Matthew of Luda, ran off the road and struck the cliff on the northern side. There was minimal damage caused to the vehicle. Philip was found in an unconscious state and was transported to the accident and emergency department of the Princess Margaret Hospital, where he was pronounced dead upon arrival. A coroner's inquest has convened and a postmortem will follow.
Mr. Carbon could not confirm reports that Mr. Matthew may have suffered a heart attack prior to the vehicular accident. He added the autopsy will determine the cause of Mr. Matthew's death. Mr. Matthew was a retired forestry officer and is the father of Triple K vocalist Lennon Alfield Matthew. In more news, Venezuela seems to be gaining the attention of the entire region lately after protests broke on February 12th following efforts by the right-wing opposition to provoke a violent overthrow of the democratically elected government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. On Tuesday, 17 February, Venezuelan opposition leader Leopoldo López turned himself over to authorities amid a rally by his supporters in Caracas. Dominica too seems to be caught in the crossfire, with members of the Dominican-based Venezuelan embassy, supported by the Dominican Labour Party, prompting an anti-protest movement.
We stand in condemnation of all attempts by opposition operatives who are seeking to disrupt the rule of law in an attempt to stage a coup for the downfall of the Maduro administration. We have watched in disbelief the violence which has been encouraged and conducted over the past several weeks and also in the last few days, which resulted in deaths and injury.
Mr. Regis called for peace and every effort at finding diplomatic solutions to end the violence in Venezuela and urged nations to stand in solidarity of any attempt to forcibly seek regime change anywhere in the world. Meanwhile, former mayor of the Roseau City Council, Mr. Cecil Joseph, called on U.S. President Barack Obama to condemn the wrongful doings of people who figure out they need their way in Venezuela.
I would like to call on the civilized administration of Mr. Obama. If he believes in freedom of people, if he believes in the establishment of organizations, and if he believes in the existence of any country, that he should condemn what is now happening in Venezuela. He should now condemn the wrongful doings of people who figure out that they need their way in Venezuela.
Dissatisfaction with the country's economic problems and the high rate of violent crimes are said to be fueling the protests. Yesterday, the Venezuelan government restricted media coverage of the protests, stating that it violated the radio, TV, and electronic media social responsibility law, which bans content condoning violence or hatred.
The Dominican Labour Party stands resolute in support of President Maduro and his administration in the face of the challenges which they now come up against, and we embrace a spirit of peace and security for all the people of Venezuela. May God bless Venezuela. Viva Venezuela. Viva!
Staff of PDV Petrocaribe, the Dominican Labour Youth Organization, and National Labour Women's Organization also expressed their dissatisfaction with the current state of affairs in Venezuela. The Venezuelan government is presently led by President Nicolas Maduro. In other stories, the Mr. Caribbean official press conference took place at the Garway Hotel today, Thursday, February 20th, 2014. The first ever male pageant of its kind here in Dominica introduces contenders from all over the region to showcase their talents and skills in various segments of the show. Founder of the Mr. Caribbean competition, Miss Marie Antoinette Mora, says the event was organized in an effort to meet the call for a more diverse carnival package.
When we held the Mr. Dominica competition 2 years ago, we answered the call from Dr. Alwyn Bully for persons to become involved in carnival activities. We added value to Dominica's carnival product with the staging of that show. The Honorable Minister of Tourism, Ian Douglas, later sounded a clarion call that tourism is everybody's business, play your part. With the Mr. Caribbean competition, we are therefore not only adding value to our carnival offering, but we are playing our part by giving the tourism sector a much-needed boost.
The 7 young men who will participate in the competition represent the islands of Anguilla, Barbados, Dominica, Guyana, Nevis, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the Bahamas.
My name is Ronnie Morris, representing Barbados, a very small but beautiful island.
My name is Yannick James, and I'm 24 years old. I'm representing the nature island of the Caribbean, Dominica.
My name is Arvin Jr. February. I'm 27 years old. I'm representing Guyana in the Miss Caribbean contest.
A visit to the Queen of the Caribbean is an experience like never before. Hailing from the beautiful island of Nevis, I am the dynamic showstopper, sponsored by the Nevis Cultural Committee.
I am Godwin Charles, representing St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
I'm Kevin Basin, representing the beautiful islands of the Bahamas.
Contestants are between the ages of 18 and 35. Unfortunately, the representative of St. Lucia was a no-show, and Omari Gums from Anguilla could not make it in time for the press conference, but will be partaking in the event. The show can be viewed live online at newmusiczone.com/Mr. Caribbean for US $15 and will take place on Friday, 21st February at the Arawak House of Culture. In more news, the message could not be made any clearer. Promoter of the Wet Fete event scheduled for Sunday, February 23rd, 2014 at the Cicero Hotel says no children will be allowed at the event. Mr. Tilly Thomas made it very clear that the event is for adults 18 and over. He added this year's show will have more energy, flavor, and action as compared to previous years. Mr. Thomas added he will not be blamed for anyone that consumes too much alcohol and gets out of order. Identification will not be required to enter the event. However, Mr. Thomas says the security guards have a clear idea of who is 18 and older. He added those who know they are not old enough to attend the event should save themselves the embarrassment of being turned away. In other stories, Dominicans are being advised to come out in large numbers to support the Mother's Queen Show scheduled for Saturday, February 22nd, 2014. This call came from Miss Patricia Coffey, chairperson of the Carnival Mother's Queen Show. 8 lovely young ladies will compete for the title of Carnival Mother's Queen 2014.
Their names are Vanessa Louisi from Point Michel, Heather Vidal from Portsmouth, Teresa Bruno from Foncole, Tariq Joseph from Kenfield, Ezra George, Bath Estate, Cecilia Henderson, Riverside, Jasmine Joseph, Mao, and Patricia Charles Granby.
She said the show was only possible thanks to the kind sponsorship of various businesses, including Diamond Girls, Jolly's Pharmacy, Ross University, the National Bank of Dominica, Petro Caribe, and Guayab Limited.
We have a young man in the United States of America, in Houston, Texas, that donated all our trophies, all participation plaques, all our trophies. Let me say thank you to him, Mr. Percy James, in Houston, Texas. If you are listening to us now, thank you very much.
Carnival promoter Mr. Val Coffey added we as Dominicans need to ensure we support the young mothers.
It doesn't mean that because you have had a child or two that you're not beautiful and sexy. And sometimes we think that that's the way it's supposed to be because you had a child, you're not looking the way you normally have to. But there are some ladies who are taking part in the Model Screen Show. And if you look well, you will wonder already if they're taking part in the National Screen Show. So that's a testament to how they keep their body, how they keep themselves. And even when they have been presenting themselves at the various events, you'll say, wow. So I think that the organizers of the Model Screen Show have tapped into a good resource, and we also want to reach them as much as possible, the best on that particular day when we have the 2014 Model Screen Show.
The show will take place at the Arak House of Culture from 8:30 p.m. This has been the local segment of the news. Coming up next,